Good afternoon and welcome to the 2023 Governor's Workforce Summit. Today's moderator is Jennifer Matarangas-King. She's the Vice President of Public Relations Governmental Affairs at VIYA. Our panelists are Shirley King, Vice President of Administration and Finance at UVI, Amber Alexander, Job Developer at Island Therapy Solutions, Jean Forde, Assistant Commissioner at the VI Department of Labor, and Monique Creque, Director of Partner Relations at VI Department of Education.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing today? So today, so happy to have this amazing panel here from different government agencies, different walks of life, but all leaders in our community. And so this is going to be really a conversation. I know we had some standard questions, but I think we're going to deviate from that because I know your experiences, you have a lot to share with our community. So as we talk about effective leadership, I think it's very easy for us, because we are such a resilient community, to forget that in the last 6 years, we have had 3 100-year incidences, if you really think about it, 2 Category 5 storms within the same month, and a few years later, a pandemic. In history, those are things that generally happen once every 100 years, but all of that happened in a 6-year time period. And during that time, all of us were in leadership positions where we had to lead a team during a very challenging time. I'd like to start with you, Monique. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the leadership skills? Think about some of the things that you had to employ during that time period, maybe new things, maybe new skills that came to the forefront, and then also talk to us about things that maybe worked before in a more static environment that maybe in this new environment with so much change became a challenge. So I'll start with you.
Okay, so when the pandemic started and we experienced the 2 hurricanes at that time, I was not in my prior position. I was in a leadership position, but at that time I was the marketing director for Tutu Park Mall. And at the mall, it was a time where we were getting ready to gear up for events, this, that, and the other, and you know, it's in an open space, there's people, and things just changed. Mm-hmm. Everything just changed. And I would say that my leadership skill that I always stuck with, and I still do, is to be a servant leader. Because I don't want to be leading and being authoritative or anything, so I'm more like a servant leader. And with that, leading while serving while leading. And it taught me to have my team, because at that time I had a team at Tutu Park Mall, and so we had to gather, we had to collaborate because things had to be different. And I was actually exiting out of that position and, you know, getting into a new position. And so I had to pass the torch on to Mr. Christian, who was my second. And there were events that were coming up that actually things that we had planned that had to be put on hold. The mall had to go under something where it hardly was open at that time, because we had to put up things where you had to keep your hands sanitized, you have to wear a mask at all times, hours change, businesses had to look at things differently, you know, money was a factor. It was just a whole lot of different things that came into play during that time, especially with the hurricane, because we had to shut down. And there were damages, people lost their homes, and so you had to be considerate of other people's feeling, you know, so it was just a whole lot. And when we did recuperate from that, here comes COVID. Mm-hmm. And things really, really changed. And I don't think that we still have, you know, gotten back from it, but we've learned to cope because we had to do things, I call it the box, mm-hmm. where we had to meet each other via Zoom, Teams, this, that. You meet people, you can't hug them, you can't interact, you just stand forward and you do what you had to do. So, you know, just leadership on a whole changed, and people just started to look at the world differently, and we still do. I mean, we're trying to be normal, but there's still that fact where you have to operate under certain circumstances.
Okay, very well. Amber, let's hear from you.
Okay, so we did get stuck with 2 hurricanes and then a pandemic, and I think a leadership skill that leaders had to take on was bringing the human approach back into organizations. We had to remember all of us went through a traumatic experience, and we had to deter from not being authoritative, but how is this human feeling today? Let me understand how their mental state is so they could be productive within the organization. So bringing the human approach back into entities, being a role model, an uplifting role model within your organization, are some good skills to have, as well as, as well as just being resilient. We're resilient people. So once we see our leaders performing and they're including us and collaborating, I think that is what makes our organizations running and effective.
Assistant Commissioner Forde?
Yes, I think there's no doubt during that period of time has been a challenging time for all of us. And more importantly, I think that it has been a time when we learned a great deal, a lot of lessons. Lesson number one is how technology, for instance, we had to embrace it. We were forced to embrace it. And how do we make it work? Because again, it could work against us if we don't use it right. So it was a learning experience for us as well. How do you still keep in touch with your people? How do you still conduct business, etc.? What do you need? And I think that that's a big lesson, and it's really changing things. You're here today, we are talking about AI, and we listened to this morning where it was even suggested that in some cases, it is so frightening what AI will be able to do. But on the other hand, I think it's important to learn about it, to embrace it, so that you can even manipulate it to make sure that you have a positive difference. So it's been a very challenging time and a learning experience.
Excellent. Ms. Lake?
Hi, I'm Shirley Lake King, University of the Virgin Islands, CFO. At the university, where our response was, the first part was to check in, have employees check in. We are very much heavily dependent on employees to get our work done. And so reaching out after the storms, when we didn't see folks showing up to our central reporting points, we had employees deployed to go and look, because not everyone had access to telephones. You know, the hurricanes had impacted a lot of our ability to get access to individuals. And so we had a team that was put tasked with looking for employees, making sure everyone was okay. That happened as a result, even after COVID. We want to make sure that even though we were not coming to the buildings, we wanted to make sure that everyone was okay and accounted for. So the human side was clearly important for us. When employees came back after the hurricanes, we found out that there were several, so we did an assessment. What are your needs? Have you lost your roof? Did you need electricity, or, temporary power? And so we actually did a campaign to provide generators to employees. When there were different activities of distributing food and other entities, commodities, we made sure our employees were also served, because they were coming to work. We had to get our facilities back online. We had to get classroom buildings back, residence halls, so the students can come back. And so that was the key, but the employees who are coming to provide that service needed to be taken care of. And so that was clearly one of our first things that, for us, was like lessons learned. We got to make sure to take care of the people that are taking care of us. And similarly with the COVID situation, making sure everyone had access to whatever their needs were so that they can continue to work. And fortunately for us, having had that deployment of resources helped us to get back on track much sooner than I think if we did not take that strategy. And so the university was one of the first places that have had internet up. So people will come and sit in their cars right by our center and get into the Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi.
Right.
So I'm saying that speaks to the level of resiliency, because that also is important to recover from some of those hardships. And so having a resilient task force means that you have to care for them.
Absolutely.
And so that was some of the lessons learned that we engaged in.
No, excellent points. And I can say from our perspective at VIYA, in both instances, someone asked me one day, they said, well, when did you return to work? And I said, we've never had the luxury of not going to work. In both cases, after the hurricanes, immediately, we literally the next day, even before the roads were cleared, we had to get back to work because we had a huge task of restoration ahead of us that lasted, quite a long time. And I take your points about the human factor, because we had employees who were coming to work who had just lost their roof. and it's making sure that we're also taking care of our employees. I think one of the lessons learned from the storms and that carried through the pandemic is just a sense of understanding our role that we play in the community. Connectivity is key. So preparedness is an ongoing thing all year. So it's not like you have to get ready, like we have to stay ready because we know the role that we have. And similarly with the pandemic, we didn't have the luxury of shutting down for a couple of weeks and, see you later. We knew that this was an episode where technology was going to accelerate, and so people who had never had internet at home, people who had never worked from home, all of a sudden needed the services. And then, of course, working with the Department of Education, we had a huge task of ensuring that the students were connected. So for us, I think the leadership skills that I think I see throughout the company, that is, and it's a word that I think is so critical, in this changing world is the ability to pivot. Like we literally didn't have time to sit and feel sorry for ourselves. Like there's a pandemic, we'll see you in 2 weeks. It was as we saw things and just being very aware. We were responsible for making sure that we were following all of the guidelines. And, we all had to become experts because we had to make sure that we kept our employees safe, but also our customers. We had to be sure that we're still taking care of them because the services were needed. So I think that all of us have been through a lot. And I think it's, we're so busy doing it, I don't think sometimes we realize, like, that's a lot. It is a lot. And then when you have a pandemic that affected everyone in the world, so even as you're working here, we're worried about family members in other places. So there were a lot of factors. But I find that although it's been challenging, I think, so looking at where you are now in terms of your leadership skills, is there one thing that you would say that is at the forefront, having gone through the last 6 years, one specific thing, or if you can give some examples of ways that maybe your leadership style has changed, maybe it hasn't, based on the rapid change, because these were all changes that were outside of our control. And I think a lot of times we make the mistake of actually thinking that we are in control. We know it in the back of our minds, but then when something happens. So do you have any thoughts about your leadership style, any changes that may have happened, or something that you think, that having gone through this, that we're different?
We are different. My leadership style has changed because I have become a situational leader, because I deal with things according to the situation that is taking place right now. Communication and technology, yes, because I think we've all had to become even more tech savvy to deal with the changes that we've had to encounter during the pandemic when we couldn't meet one another. Work was another factor because there were days where you have meetings and I was introduced to Zoom and Teams and all of that, and I've never had that experience before, and I had to learn. Even with classes, you had to be online. So technology did change. For me, coming to work for the Department of Education, technology played a big role because they had the students and they had to learn. I mean, education still had to go on and they had to do things and they had to have laptops and be equipped, and teachers still had to become innovative because innovation was the key. That's another one because everything changed and we had to just keep moving with the innovation and moving with the times.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm also in agreement with what Ms. Creque said. I want to say as well that innovation and creativity has played a big role because we know the world is ever changing and technology is the new thing. And also collaboration. I felt that prior to all these major incidents that we had, we were just focused on getting the job done. And knowing that now all of these new changes are occurring, it was, we have to collaborate. How can you and I work together to make this bigger picture happen? So definitely adjusting, collaborating, and just definitely being there for one another and sharing the knowledge that each may know to teach one to get to the next level and to get ahead.
Excellent point.
I'm not quite sure whether or not my leadership style has changed. I have always been an individual who looks out for others, and I think that I have maintained that. I'm probably doing it through different means because, again, the means of communication that we had. So in that aspect, I would hope, though, that I am still sensitive to know that people have needs. So even though that I want to live and set certain standards, and I expect individuals to meet certain standards, I still want to be sensitive to the struggles that they are going through. And so in that sense, I want to believe that I have remained consistent with my leadership style.
So that's a good question. If I reflect on my career, so I started working 39 years ago, I would think that I have changed. Why I say that? Because I was the numbers person, get to the bottom line, books by the, do it by the books. But when I hear, no, fast forward, my employee said, "Oh, Ms. King, you're very compassionate." I'm like, "Well, I am." I have never seen myself, but I want to believe that those 2 periods where we've had those interruptions have forced me to, I guess, from within, become this person that I am now, that I am, more compassionate. But I was really the bottom line. We got to get to this bottom line. Right. Got to get a task done. I was a task-oriented person. So I think they have impacted me in many ways that I did not envision would be happening. But it goes back to speaking to being resilient, being thoughtful, recognizing that people are there. People have, they are the ones that we depend on to get the work done. So we got to be sensitive to them and be, have the emotional intelligence, all it takes to help them to survive. Because if we don't have employees on board, then the needle doesn't move, the vision doesn't get accomplished, the mission then fails.
No, that's an excellent point. Your comment about collaboration, I feel that is something that I'm definitely seeing more of. And I do think with COVID, we had Zoom and we had those ways of connecting, but I think for us as a company, we found we came out of COVID, but still around, but the major shutdown, looking at our business differently in terms of how we engage. Before COVID, it was come to our office, come to us. With COVID, of course, using technology was more encouraging our customers to be more self-sufficient for their safety. And I remember doing radio shows saying, Granny, we love you, and we used to love to see you in the store, but please don't come in. I mean, literally, going into a store became dangerous in terms of being out. And so, really encouraging people to use technology. We know that there was a lot of risk aversion around that, but really encouraging it. But more importantly, we said, okay, so we're not going to go back to everybody come to the office. And so we actually changed our model. Someone said to me, "Is VIYA everywhere?" I said, "Yes, we are." So I'm sure you see us, our community sales team is literally in every community. We use the opportunity to really ensure, as we talk about bridging the digital divide, we have the Affordable Connectivity Program. Essentially, it's a federal subsidy that allows you, if you're receiving some type of federal fund, Medicaid, SNAP, or WIC, that you can receive either a discount on internet or, in our case, our program, you can receive a MiFi or phone. We knew, coming off of COVID, we knew several things. One, the acceleration, obviously, of the adoption of technology, but more importantly, we learned a lot from our collaboration with the Department of Education, because what we knew during COVID, we had 6,000 MiFis that were now in homes that maybe had never had internet before. And we also knew that at some point they were going back to the classroom and those MiFis would be leaving the home. And so when we looked at the ACP program, we said we have to go into the communities. And so we go into the housing communities, we go to human services, we collaborate with education, we collaborate with the Department of Labor, because we knew that that need for technology was not going to go away because COVID was over. In that instance, there was going to be even more of a need. And so everything that we've done since then, for us, it's all about connectivity, collaboration, and community. It's thinking of what can we do every day to get that technology out there, because we never know, there may be some other incident, hopefully not, but we may have to retreat again. And so we can't just say, oh, well, now that we're back outside, we'll just go back to doing everything the same way. And so even for us as a company, we are still preparing, as we do our disaster preparedness, for whatever the next incident that may require us to work in a different way. So that was a lot. But I'm just, reflecting on how our leadership style, and I think it's really become, and leadership really from our CEO, who pivot was a key word for all of us. Like, guys, people are depending on us. And I think it's also in leadership, I think communication is key, being very clear with your team, but also understanding that what's in it for me, what's your role. You know, we're not just putting in phones or services. People are relying on us for their safety, for their education, for their health, and everyone understanding the importance of their role. And so I find in terms of leadership, having a CEO who made it very clear to everyone, your title is irrelevant. She always says that. No one cares what your title is. They just want to know that you're going to be able to get them connected. And so I think from a leadership standpoint, making that very clear, but also leading by example, that was very, very important. As we're talking about leadership and development and economic development, what do you see, you know, as we have a lot going on in the territory, a lot of development, you heard that unemployment is very low. What are your thoughts about, in your organization, your role in economic development, and you know, each of you are in a critical role, the leadership skills that are going to be needed for us to move forward? You know, as you're looking at what will the USVIA look like 10 years, 20 years from now, what are some of the things that's going to be important for our leaders in terms of skills that you think would be valuable for them to lead us forward for economic development?
The one word that comes to mind is humanism.
Okay.
Humanism. That goes a long way, because you have to feel, you have to have thought, you have to be considerate. And I think as leaders, I try to speak and be very clear about this, because I believe in 100% pure customer service. And when I go out, because as the Director of Partner Relations, I form partnerships and I collaborate with people. And when I go out there, I want to give them me. I want to be kind, I want to be polite, I want to share what I have with them. And if I go in there and I be rude, they're gonna be like, they'll tell my commissioner, don't send her back here. So, and I'm representing the department and every single student that we have under our umbrella, and I'm working for them, because the children are our futures. They're today's learners who will become tomorrow leaders just like us. So I say humanism is that one skill as a leader that we need to have when dealing with people.
Okay.
The word that comes to mind for me is actually to open-mindedness and thinking outside of the box. In my area of work, I do job development for individuals with autism at Island Therapy Solutions. And I do the job development under a division which is called VIYA Supported Employment Specialties. So it's my job literally to sit down and network with different entities, saying, how can I get my client in your door to show that they have the skills to work? And I feel as though at times, many individuals do not understand what they do not know, or we need to fill the gap that's missing. Everyone is able to do work or able to do something, and once we could sit down collectively again and collaborate and say, hey, would you give this person an opportunity? Because that's at most times what it is. It's just that willingness to say, yes, let me give them an opportunity to try out, to do what they do. So definitely open-mindedness and thinking outside the box on creating new opportunities within the territory to keep things thriving and moving.
Excellent point.
And certainly I agree with her. At Department of Labor, of course, we are responsible to try and make sure that any individual who wants a job can find a job. And we do have established from the board, the Workforce Development Board, we do have certain demand sectors that they create and that we go out and we find individuals, educating them, enlightening them to what are the trending jobs, etc., and make sure that they're adequately prepared. However, I think that listening to today's summit, and where we learned that our unemployment rate is 3.1%,
Yes.
which is practically a full employment.
Correct.
Yet at the same time,
Yes.
we know that there are individuals who still are complaining that they can't find a job. So I think that as we learn further that there are job opportunities which needs to be taken advantage of, whether it's on the demand sector or not. I was just involved in a conversation with a young lady who was talking about court stenographers and the need for court stenographers. And then I'm reminded that just recently the Chief Justice was before the legislature, where he indicated that they're in need of some 14 court stenographers. So it shows that that's a sector there. Now what we have to do is to make sure that we expose our children to that, make sure that we prepare them, that this is a skill. I see individuals typing very fast on their phones, so I know they have the skill
Right.
to,
Absolutely.
and guess what? Think about how much it pays, how rewarding it is, because you're talking about 100 plus.
Yes.
So being the last speaker is a challenge, but I'll step up to it. The one thing that comes to mind with respect to leadership is transparency. And I say transparency because if your success is dependent on other individuals, and they need to know what they're about. What is a mission? We got to share it with them. What is a vision? So that they can be engaged in helping to move that needle, because that's what you would like to have happen. You like to have improvements, like to further your business and expand. And so coming from a non-job but more like entrepreneurial phase means that you have to have that energy, that drive, the optimism to keep people engaged. If you walk into work dreary and tired, your employees are not going to be excited. So being a leader takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of, keeping healthy is another important part of being an effective leader. Because if you're not getting your rest, eating properly, getting all the exercise that you need to help you stay healthy, then you are not able to continue to be an effective leader. So there's a whole lot in that, but the bottom line is to be effective, there are many elements: being healthy, being transparent, being accountable, and like my colleagues all shared their keywords. It's a whole mix of all of those things.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the, if you look at books from maybe 20, 30 years ago about what it means to be a leader, many of those things may not be as applicable now, because you're required to be much more flexible, to really, think pretty quickly. And then like I said, we're being faced with all of these new things that we've never had to even think about before, and what's required. I take your point about transparency, because I think that's very important if you're especially leading a team. I think, old school method would be, the boss is the one who knows, and maybe a select group, and everyone else is trying to figure it out. But when you do that, you also breed an environment of confusion, because if they don't know, they will make something up. And so, being transparent, having those conversations, even difficult conversations of change, I think it helps with employees to understand, okay, this is the team, this is where we're going towards, and then having things, we have regular meetings with all of our employees where we discuss the health of the company and the numbers and how we're doing, and, so everyone knows their role in it, and understanding that, it's, whether your title is customer service or not is irrelevant. We're all in the business of customer service. And so having that interconnectedness, I think, helps, where it's, you move away from the silos. Oh, that's that department, that's not mine. No, we have to work together. And really encouraging the, we talk a lot about internal and external customers, because sometimes you have people who are super nice to the external customer, but not at all engaging with the internal customers that help. Everyone has to pull together to take care of the external customer. So I think, the transparency and having those kinds of conversations. And I think, too, moving away from the top down, I'm going to tell you what to do, and really engaging and listening. I find one of the things that I've really been pleased to see, I've been with VIYA for 25 years, it'll be 25 years in January, movement in the company. I love to see when someone comes in maybe as a cashier, but while they're there, they take an interest in other things and they learn and grow. That's one of the things, as we're engaging with, especially students. I always talk about, what's my superpower if I were to look back at my career over the years. Curiosity was one. Every job I've ever had, okay, this may be my title, but I want to know what's my role with these two other people. What am I doing? And so I've been able to learn more, and I find the people that I've seen that have been able to move, it was about, I came in to do one thing, but I took advantage of all the training, I spoke to the CEO, I engaged with other departments. So as organizations are constantly changing, when changes are made, someone will look at you and say, you're not just a one-trick person. You know, these are the 5 or 6 things that you're able to do, and that's how you make yourself more valuable. And it's not always based specifically on a trade or even a degree, but, you know, are you someone who's willing to learn? And I think as a leader, you sort of have to set that example, you know, where you're stepping out and learning new things too, and being transparent about it. You know, this is new to me, but you know what, we're all going to learn. I think it makes a big difference in terms of, I find that this is a word that I think probably 20 years ago you would not hear in leadership, but just being a little bit vulnerable sometimes. You know, and so employees don't feel like, oh, that's the boss. They always know everything and they're always right. But saying, you know, okay, this is, based on the information I had, this is a decision I made, but I'm seeing that it's not working out. Perhaps we can go in a different direction. I think those are the kinds of things that then I think employees have more, they're more engaged, and they also feel like, you know, because a lot of times we may be the leader, but there are 5 people in the room who know the better way. But if we don't engage them, they'll say, well, she'll have to figure it out. You know, and that's not what you want. You want it to be a situation where, you know, we're all working. You know, I always say my job as a leader, I'm good at building teams and collaborations. You know, I thrive on that, and I'm happy. I mean, some of the ones, education, we're doing some things with labor. It doesn't mean that I know everything, but I'm good at getting teams, and a big part of team building is understanding who are the different players who have certain skills, and also, you know, a skill that someone may have, they may not even think it's a big deal, but it is. It is in the greater realm, so it's a lot of communication. Okay, enough about that. But so we've been talking about economic development and moving forward. As you're looking around and we're talking about leadership skills and what you're seeing, in your work, have you seen certain traits that you find may be becoming more prominent, that may not be helpful? I think as we talk about the great things and the ways that we've changed, with all that's happening, are you seeing certain new types of traits in leadership that, you know, perhaps maybe something that, is this something that we should really be looking at, encouraging? Any thoughts on that?
Within my role, I'm seeing everything that I do is collaboration. I've been seeing that. And I sit every day to collaborate with people. And when we collaborate, we form partnerships, and we get the job done. And we get the job done for one thing that we're focusing on. And I've noticed, I've never had to do that before, but I notice now that I'm collaborating a lot more with a lot of different agencies working towards the same goal. So
that's good.
That's how I look at it.
Okay.
Would you like to go first?
Yeah.
So you don't have to go.
I'll take his mic.
Okay.
Thank you, Amber. The one thing I have seen that I think I've learned over the years is understanding people's personalities. Because in interacting with individuals, they respond differently to different, you know, how you approach them. And so I have learned that, you know, understanding a person's personality helps me knowing how to interact with them. And that has helped, you know, further, you know, move the needle a little further. And I remember an incident when I had an employee who would sit at his computer but would never touch it because he was afraid of making a mistake. And I kept, you know, but he kept this very clean. He'll cover it over, you know, at the end of every day.
It was a nice paperweight.
Yeah, and I was like, what is going on? But after I actually did a personality inventory, I recognized what was really going on with him. So I sat with him for a week, for 5 mornings a week. And the next week, he was so excited he was able to use his computer because he was the green ledger. You know those ledgers with 35 columns?
Oh, yes.
Yes, he kept his records on the green ledger. This was an accounts receivable. And he, for the life, felt very comfortable depending on the green ledger. But when he was able to use a computer, oh my goodness. So whenever I see him, he would say, oh, Ms. King is the best supervisor ever. I'm like, no, and all it took was to develop his confidence in that piece of machinery. So getting to know people's personalities, where their shortcomings or their fears are, would help us as leaders to recognize that they have potential, they can contribute more if we understood how they function, how they operate.
That's an important point.
And I would just piggyback on that a little bit, because I think that that is so important, that as a leader, that you have to recognize also good qualities in your employees. I don't think that it's sufficient just to do all the negative and point out all of what you didn't do.
Right.
You should also point out what you did and what you did well.
Right.
As a matter of fact, even as a good leader, you should be open-minded. You should recognize that there's probably no one way of just doing things. There are a variety of ways, and the question is, which is the most effective? And so you've got to give individuals a chance to develop themselves, to express themselves, and then you can make a decision in terms of providing adequate guidance.
Sorry. Basically, piggybacking off of what all my colleagues or panelists said, humanism, like Ms. Creque stated, truly understanding who your team is, understanding each individual to understand and recognize their strengths, their weaknesses. The Virgin Islands has so many talented people, but if we truly get to learn each individual and recognize, like you stated, what are their good things that they can do, what are the good qualities, and keep pushing that confidence onto them and seeing what they bring to the table, I think everything would be so much more effective within entities and organizations. For example, for me, I can tell you a million ideas that's in this head and I can execute, but you might be the creative person. You might be the analytical person. What are the pros? What are the cons? How do we get this started? So truly understanding each individual in the room and then collectively coming together and executing ideas could push everything forward.
Hey, can you hold on to the mic, because I want to get back to something that you said earlier about your role. And my question is about diversity and inclusion, vulnerable communities, because you talk about working with people who have autism.
Correct.
And, you know, the education process, understanding that they're capable people who can work and do amazing things. In some fields, they actually thrive. You know, Elon Musk is on the autism spectrum. Yes.
Correct.
And so, and many of the top inventors. And so, you know, as we look at, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the role of inclusion, because you're talking about people who are capable of working, and it's now sharing information and educating people because they may have a need. So as we talk about roles that are not being filled, you know, are people aware of? So talk to me a little bit about that, because I think that's really important. Because that's a big part of economic development too, making sure that everyone who
has
can
a
work
chance.
and who wants to work is working.
Right. So basically, for example, I had a client who was very good on computers, and we actually got him a position within the legislature where he was doing the binders for all the Senate meetings. So basically what we had to do was see what was the need of the employer and then carve out certain positions for that individual to show that, hey, this person can work and it can help eliminate some of the tasks of your other individuals so they could progress and they can assist. This person can assist to get things moving. So it's basically just understanding what the needs of the employers are and creating positions that these individuals may be good at. These individuals show up on time every day for work. They want to work, so they're gonna be a person who's there first in the morning, last to leave, asking questions, but we just have to give them the opportunity and give that chance to say, hey, come through our doors. Let's see what you can do and how we can enhance the skills that you have.
Oh, that's a really important point. Anyone else want to talk about inclusion in your organizations in terms of groups that may not be, and I think the work that you're doing is tremendous, because a lot of it is education and misunderstanding about you know, what workers look like. Workers come in, you know, all varieties and capable.
Of course, for us, we certainly don't discriminate. We are equal employer opportunity. Again, I think that we have to realize, and I guess someone spoke about the humanistic factor. Again, none of us are perfect. All of us have a flaw in some way or the other. all of us have something to offer. And it's just a matter of finding the right niche, tapping on it, and making sure that it is productive for you. And given the chance, given the adequate training and so forth, I think everybody deserves an equal chance.
Excellent. Ms. Lake-King?
I wanted to add that, so I think from an organizational perspective, being diverse, so you have diverse offerings, because the conventional way of just, this is what I offer and that's it, is long gone. So we have to be relevant. And so at the university, we do have the conventional academic courses, but now we have learned to diversify our offerings to have programs in the CEL area, which is the Center for Excellence in Leadership and Learning. We just changed the name. So that's one area you can come and learn different skills or different certification programs. So we have diversified our offerings so that more individuals are able to access. So even from a perspective of being online offerings, when COVID came, we had already started offering courses online. So it was an easy shift for us to then offer all courses online for that period of time until we're able to get back into our facilities. And so now the case becomes more individuals prefer to have online. So we do have online degree programs. So the family that can't come down to campus or may have a child care issue can access the courses from their home, thanks to VIYA. And so, yes, it's all a community affair to reach the masses, to get as many people to have access. And so diversification for us has paid off to make a more economic impact in the territory.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to add that at the Department of Education that we have students that are on the spectrum, and we also have the students that are regular, and we're teaching them how to go out into the workforce. And the students that are on the spectrum as well, they are training them to have a job, to be heard, to be a part of a job, and to communicate with people, to show their skills, because the autistic kids they're very, very smart, and they just focus in on something, and there are a lot of businesses that could use them. Right. So we do not discriminate against that at all, and we encourage the employers to actually give them a chance as well.
Okay, excellent. As we talk about diversity, and it's really ensuring that whatever, I know for us, whatever we're doing, we're really thinking about what does our community look like. And even as we're going out and we're doing community engagements, as we go out, we're finding communities within communities, and really thinking about what we do every day, how is that impacting? One of the things that we're working on, as a matter of fact, tomorrow we're involved in a walk with the Center for Independent Living and the Lions Club, a White Cane Safety Day, which is for blind individuals and white canes awareness. We've been running an ad for the last 3 weeks. What is that about? What's the purpose of the white cane? Most people may not even know there are some white canes that are actually Wi-Fi enabled, and so it's a tool. So there's a lot of information, and we're working on the tools that we have, the products and services, like an iPhone is a lifesaver for many blind people. There's a lot of assistive technology, and we're spending some time to figure out that tools that we have that, we have a group of people in the community who may have an iPhone, maybe, and one of the things too is I've been having conversations with groups. Many people are not born disabled, but they become disabled. One person I was speaking to, he had sight until he was 43, and then he didn't anymore. An accident, a stroke. At any point in time, anything can happen where we no longer have the facilities that we had before. And how do you transition? And a lot of it is around technology. And so that's one of the things we're really working on, everything from whether it's TV, and our products and services. We have a lot of people that call and talk about, okay, the closed caption wasn't working, but understanding that there are tools that we have, and when we think about these tools, it's more than just for the people who can watch TV. What about the people who are listening to TV? That's important too, and so really looking at all of the products and services. So the diversity for us is not just internally, but what is it that we're offering to the public, and not just the people who are using the tools and services in the way that the average person is thinking about it. And it's really been an educational journey for myself and the team in terms of, okay, what are some of the things that I learned a lot about assistive technology, and there literally is an app for everything. But it's once again, it's all about education. So we find for us, it's not only what we're doing internally, but how can we be more open and engaging with the community and the things that we're learning. So we are going to be collaborating. We're already collaborating with the Disability Rights Center for the VIYA said. So we have some exciting things coming up. But it's once again collaborating with the people that know. I'm like, tell me, what do you need from us? And then, it's a process. So we have some exciting things that we're looking at kicking off pretty soon. But I think the diversity piece, because at the end of the day, you have populations within our population that have a lot to offer, but they need access and the tools to be able to do that, to be a part of the economic development in the territory. Time check. Okay, we have 15 minutes. I will give everyone a few minutes to wrap up, and then I want to open it up for questions. So, Monique?
I just wanted to say that we had a great conversation about our leadership skills and how since 2017 to 2023, how so many things have changed, how the workforce has changed. You don't have to go into, some jobs don't require you to go into the office. You can still use your computer, your phone, whatever, to just still always get the job done, and it's just changed the workforce in so many different ways. And as Ms. Lake said, that, her compassion towards people is different. It's just a whole lot of different things, that we come encounter with. And I like the way we're going. And if we continue to be that way, maybe things would get better. But for now, the new change is good. And I just wanted to say that.
First off, I want to say thank you for having me on this amazing panel. I'm like the youngest here, so, But I mean, I truly know 3 individuals on this panel. I wasn't really familiar with Ms. Lake, but definitely learning and listening from each individual on the panel has been grateful. And in my leadership journey, I definitely would like to continue to learn from individuals above me and also bring forth to the table things that I may know. Because I've always learned to never be the smartest person in the room. It's always constantly learning, constantly evolving as an individual, as a leader, to thrive.
Yes, excellent.
And likewise, for me, this has been a learning experience for me, this whole summit. Even here today, sharing the ideas, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for all of us. And one of the things that I would like to do is to make sure that I encourage individuals out there to, again, the knowledge that they gained, the wisdom that was shared at the summit, at the different panelists, again, take them seriously. I think today's theme that we have, which talks about seizing the opportunity, seizing the moment. Again, there's so many things out there that we can do. We just need to seize the moment. We need to be creative, believe in ourselves, learn from others. There's not always that you have to reinvent the wheel. There's others out there, we can piggyback on their experience. Don't make the same mistakes that they have made. So there's an opportunity there. I want to encourage everybody, seize the moment and, be successful. Thank you.
Great words. So I'm last again. However, I would say this is a great opportunity. It's good to know, meet other individuals in other parts of the territory that I've never met before, and for us to share. As a territory, I would say we have become, I'm proud to say we are resilient people. Even though we are living on an island, we are far removed from a lot of resources. When things happen, we get back on track. So our resiliency has helped us to be where we are. And when we hear that we have a 3% unemployment rate, I mean, that speaks volumes. Yes. That people are out there creating opportunities, creating and looking for opportunities. And so the resilience is what I think has taken us a far way. Even though there's still room for improvement, room for growth, that we still can, continue to prepare ourselves. We never know when that next event may occur, and so having a level of preparedness, whether it's getting our skills together, getting our leadership opportunities, and as you said, Ms. Matarangas-King, knowing when to pivot, when things happen, do I stay in the same rut or do I then make a change? So leadership, being cognizant of your surroundings, of your environment, and knowing when to make that change, when is the opportune time to make that change, is also very important. So I look forward to us as a territory continue to doing more so that we can then be more economically empowered to help the next generation and the future generations to come.
Absolutely. Thank you. Wonderful. Before we go, I'd like to find out if there are any questions from the audience. Questions? Yes?
So, good afternoon. So what advice would you give to, especially we have a lot of students here, what advice would you give to them who want to hone the leadership skills or take where they are to the next level?
I can start. I would encourage, and I'm hoping that the students, I feel a little sad because I haven't had a chance to engage with them as much, so next year I would love to be on the youth track. I think it's very important. I am anyone who knows me knows it's all about representation for me. If you're a young person and you're thinking about a career, talk to someone who's doing it. Try and spend time, because you may find, I've met people who say, when we used to do the scholarship program, who said they wanted to be a doctor, but then they say that they really didn't like blood. And I said to myself, well, why? But, and sometimes the answer is, well, they make a lot of money. And so it's really encouraging students, if you're interested in a particular career or a field, spend some time with the people who are doing it. See if this is what you're really interested. But also, don't be afraid to talk to adults, because most of us will talk to you. We're happy. I am always happy to bring someone in, do interviews. I love when they call. I get calls. I'm a student at VIYA and I'm working on a report, and I will spend time, because I think, it's hard to imagine yourself in something if you haven't seen it, and representation for me, anyone who knows me, I am proud to say I'm from Hill Street, St. Croix. A lot of people, when they see my name on a piece of paper, they don't know until they see me, they're expecting something else. And so when they realize, I'm from Hill Street, very humble beginnings, Pro B. Larson School, St. Dunstan's, and, everything after, then I see young ladies like, oh, okay, she's like me. She's like my sister. This isn't somebody who, magically appeared. This is someone who, humble beginnings, great parents, education, sacrifice, all of those things. And so I think, for me, when I think about leadership, I feel that I have a role as a leader to make myself available. That's a big deal for me, as much time as I can with students and young people, so they see what leadership looks like, and not the TV leader. The one that shows up in a suit and they work for a few hours and they have lunches. And, a part of being a leader is sometimes getting that 2 o'clock in the morning phone call, which I have had on vacation. I mean, all that goes with it. And it's all amazing. But I think we have a great responsibility because they are watching us. They are watching us.
I just wanted to add that I feel that mentoring the young people, is very vital. Miss Amber Alexander and I had a conversation earlier, and both of us are in the doctoral cohort at the University of the Virgin Islands. And we were talking and we were saying that, some people, you want the young people to model you and follow you, and we just feel that when we get to that point, that they could be like us. I consider myself normal, and not because in a few years we will receive our doctorate that it will change us, because we said it will not. And I just feel that the young people need to be mentored and to guide them, because they're just looking for structure. They just want to learn and they want to just be a part of it, and we just have to teach them. And that's where the workforce comes in. And I feel that businesses should allow the young people to come in and you train them, and that's how they learn, and they begin to build their self-confidence. And when they build that self-confidence, they can move forward and be positive and make something of themselves.
Two qualities that comes to mind is always being teachable and coachable. Always being willing to learn what's new. You're not going to know everything. And us as leaders, we have to just listen. If we listen to these young people, they have a whole lot to tell us. But we just have to take that time to get down to their level, let them see that, hey, this is not just a big boss. We can't talk to them. They're too busy for us. That's how a lot of them feel. So coming down to their level, coming down to their understanding, and just sitting and listening to them, seeing how we could assist, how we could help them to move forward. A lot of them probably don't want to go to college, but if we show them opportunities of you can still become a leader, you can still become an entrepreneur with the skills you have, just enhancing and developing those skills, you can be successful product of the community.
Absolutely.
So my advice to youngsters is simple. Think before you act. Also, think about the repercussions from your actions. I think in many cases that we have talented individuals. As a matter of fact, earlier in the session for the youth today, there was an individual who was encouraging and preaching the same very message. Again, that there are opportunities out there for you. You've got to be responsible enough to seize the moment for that opportunity, to make sure that you don't do anything to the contrary.
Yeah.
To the contrary. That would guide you down the wrong pathway. Okay? I think we have to realize that we are faced right now with social media, which is playing a big role in a lot of our lives. And we do things, we record it, everyone has a cell phone that records, we post these pictures, and we don't realize that a couple of years later, those same actions are being used against you.
Absolutely.
You know, whether be it from the fighting, whether be it from the exhibition of the drugs and the guns, etc.,
Right.
or just plain old vulgarity. You know, so we have got to make sure that I want to at least express to the youngsters that, again, think before you act. These things can and will come back to haunt you,
Absolutely.
regardless to how talented you may be. Okay, we had, like I said earlier today, a talented individual. You know, and there he went down from 9th grade. I mean, he pretty much had success painted for him. You know, and he still ended up in jail.
Yeah.
My contribution would be to encourage a young person to know what you would like, what do you see yourself doing 30 years from now, and set your goal and work toward it. And at the same time, making sure that your activities, the time that you spend, you are working toward that goal. So clearly means you have to be intentional about setting goals, setting a course or a plan. Things may change, and so it goes back to pivoting. You know, your conditions or circumstances may change, but if you know that this is a goal you'd like to have, work towards it. You know, spending the time on, you know, on social media, is that, you know, assess, is this going to help me get toward my goal? You know, so be very intentional and deliberate about what do you see yourself doing and working towards that goal, I think would be my advice, in addition to what my colleagues have said.
Okay. Another question? Ma'am.
Thank y'all so much for such great insights into leadership. But you spoke about during COVID how you had to kind of pivot, right? That was the operative word. So what does leadership look like in the future for the VI? Do you see us doing a lot more collaborations outside in the diaspora, on the continent, being able to especially use technology to do so? And I ask because, for example, our school in St. Croix is a virtual school. And we utilize our technology to be able to work with teachers that are on the continent as well as those that are in the States. So I'm wondering, do you see that as a trend that will continue to pick up? Or is that just kind of something that is, you know, going to be segmented to depending on what your industry is?
No, I think, I mean, as we look at globalization, I think, and that's why it's so important that we don't fall behind with the digital divide, because that's just going to continue. And, you know, access to everything, it's all about access. It really is all about access. I was having a conversation with someone about, just even the conversation about mental health, and someone said, you know, it seems like the whole world is sad, and we were talking about, are things, in some cases, are there more disasters, are there more of everything? Or is it just that we have access to more of it? You know, back in the day, if something happened on St. Croix, it happened in Christiansted. The people who were there knew, maybe it was in the paper, and, you know, if you read the paper, you found out about it. When something happens now, it's worldwide. And, you know, and that's wonderful, but there's also the other side of it. And so in terms of access and globalization, and that's just going to continue. And it's imperative that we, when it comes to the digital piece of it, we don't fall behind. Especially, you know, I'm always concerned about children, because you see, you know, now as you know, move forward. I went to college in 1987, and I was talking to my daughter about her experience going to college. It's so different from mine. I was telling her, you know, when I went to college, there was a phone booth at the end of the hall, and, you know, once a week, I used, you know, I made a collect call to talk to my mom, and I said, you know, when you went to, you know, I can track wherever you are, you know, it's just a completely different situation. And so, you know, that's great for her because she's a techie, but then I also think about there are people her age who aren't in that same space. And I mean, even as we've gone through the pandemic and we see some of the challenges that students are having. So we have to continue to keep up because the world is going to keep going. I mean, and the technology, you know, a good point was made earlier today about AI. We're talking about it now. AI has been around for a minute. It's been influencing things, entertainment, music, all these. It's more mass consumption, and the mass consumption of things will continue. And so, you know, but that's also why, and another comment was made about our culture and what's coming in and what that's going to look like. So I don't think that this is going to change. I do want to make a point. I was a bit concerned, you know, during COVID, you had to pivot quickly and everybody went remote, and some departments figured it out, some didn't. And then I saw in some cases people came back to work and sort of pretended like COVID didn't happen. We're all back to work now. And there were concerns for me because I think some departments, you had people who worked remotely, but they still didn't get it when they were doing it. They were struggling. Now that they're back in the office, you have to come up with tools in the event that this has to happen again. You know, we can't sit and think, oh, you know, it'll be another 100 years for a pandemic or something else. We have to constantly think about, if something were to happen, how would we, and that's the way we're always thinking at work. And any given day, although we're all at work, at any given day, we have a plan for if something happens and we have to work remotely, how do we keep the company running? And I think that's something that would be helpful, I think, for any agency or anyone that's affecting a lot of people, because it did take some departments a while to kind of get to that mode of taking care of their clients. And the question is, you know, what are you doing today to take care of your clients if a disaster happened that you couldn't operate the way that you're operating now? So I know that's a long answer, but I think the direction that we're going in, it's not going to revert back.
We have become more recognizing that in COVID that we could work remotely. I think that's what most employees prefer, but we have to really come to a point as leaders to determine which positions can fit that model and which can't, and determine if, you know, how that would happen, because like was said, we could have another pandemic or something similar. Are we able to pivot at that time? So what are the lessons learned from the last time? You know, so we should not lose sight of what that presents to us, an opportunity to look within. Are we prepared for the next disaster? How prepared are we? Do we have a plan? Right. And so looking at the resources, because right now there are employers who are offering jobs, remote jobs. You could be all halfway across the world and be an employee.
Absolutely.
Are we positioned to that? Because that could become the competitive edge that we do not have.
Correct.
So we have to be relevant so we can stay in business.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry I have to leave.
Well, thank you.
But it's been great.
Thank you for being a part of the panel. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, just really simple, that technology is going to continue changing. And the more it changes, the more innovative it will be. And so with that, the world will just keep changing. And it could be where I could just record my whole self, like a hologram, that's what they call it, and appear where I need to be. So I just see things just keep progressing and moving. That's just my simple thought.
There's no doubt in my mind that things are not going backwards. You know, and again, we shouldn't expect it to go backwards either. What we have to do again is to embrace ourselves, that for the future. Just like we are not, there's no car that's going to be made without air condition, you know. And there are just certain things. We're in the microwave age. There's even our cell phones, you know. We're not going backwards with them. We want the type of apps that's going to take a lot of speed, so these are going to have to improve, you know. And before, some of us used to be afraid of cell phones. If you recall, we thought that it gives cancer, so you're not putting it next to your face and all of that. But they have improved on that and cut down the radiation and all of that. And so now today, every last one of us have a cell phone. We're not going backwards. Schools, colleges, universities, they're all offering online courses. You know, they're not going backwards. So brace yourself. This is the future.
Any other questions?
Well, what does that look like in terms of collaboration? Because you spoke about the human aspect. And to me, that's important, to not allow technology to become the overlords, but for us to use it to make sure that we are advancing and that we're understanding each other on a broader spectrum. So at the same time, keeping our culture, not losing ourselves within it.
Correct.
So that's what I'm saying in terms of moving forward, leadership in the VI, what does that look like?
I think it's just natural. Okay, thank you. I think when you ask me about the human side, I think it's just natural. It has to be that despite all that we have in terms of technology, the human side is still going to have to come out. I just feel that way, that you're going to still have to show your human side. Even though we have robots, we have AI, we have this, we have that, but you're still human.
I think it's a very good question that you ask, because we see the difference even in our schools today. We saw that when they were being at home and they're doing things virtually, the moment they came back, they couldn't interact and get along with each other, and it ended up being in a fight and all of that sort of stuff. So it is going to be a challenge, and each and every one of us got to examine ourselves to determine, you know, to what level we want to collaborate with each other. Are we going to be enemies? Are we just going to be cold friends where we only say hi and bye, or are we going to be friends? It is going to affect, and that's one of the negativities that I see technology may bring to us. But it is a challenge. Good question.
Any other questions? No? Well, everyone, I want to thank you for participating today to our panel, and thank you for listening, and we hope this has been enlightening. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for coming to the summit. Thank you.